Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. I wanted to cover this really tragic story. A 24-year-old police officer in Chicago was shot and killed near her home, and she had just finished her shift. Only been on the police force for 3 years, and they're not sure whether she was targeted or it was a random attack. Clearly it was somebody who probably targeted her because she was a police officer. So let's take a look at the story.
The 24-year-old female officer had just left work when she was shot to death early this morning in the Avalon Park neighborhood. Fox 32's Nate Rogers has been following this tragic story all day. It is here with the latest. Nate?
A devastating, heartbreaking tragedy indeed. Right now, Mayor Lightfoot says the family is requesting privacy at this time. Chicago police not releasing a lot of details or specifics just yet. We do know that detectives are working to learn if the victim was targeted or if this was a random robbery. Loved ones grief-stricken and heartbroken outside UFC Hospital. One of Chicago's bravest killed right in front of her own home.
81st and Blackstone, we got a person shot. It's an off-duty PO. Get an ambulance here now.
Police responded to a shot spotter alert. Multiple gunshots were heard. 24-year-old Areanah Preston was found laying in the front yard. Sources say her service weapon and badge were missing.
The officer picked our officer up, put him in the back of a squad car, and immediately brought to University of Chicago Hospital, where she succumbed to her wounds early this morning.
It happened here at 81st and Blackstone just before 1:45 a.m. Interim Police Superintendent Eric Carter says Preston had just finished her work shift.
Right now, we ask that you keep the officer and her family in your prayers.
Preston worked for the department for 3 years. Loyola University confirming she was on track to graduate May 13th with a master's of jurisprudence from the School of Law. Mayor Lightfoot speaking with family members earlier in the day, saying their lives are shattered.
When I got the call this morning, I wasn't just a mayor, I was a mom. And thinking about what the parents of this young officer would be feeling today.
Dozens of Chicago police joined the processional as Preston's body was taken from UFC to the medical examiner's office. Mayor-elect Brandon Johnson in a statement saying he's, quote, outraged and devastated by this horrific violence against a public servant and will do everything to support the family and CPD during this traumatic time.
So Lori Lightfoot visibly moved there. The person hasn't been apprehended yet. They haven't really given much information at all. So let's get into the article. A young Chicago police officer who had recently earned her master's degree and whose family called happy and intelligent was shot dead early Saturday shortly after leaving the station following her shift on the city's south side, Chicago police said. Police responded to ShotSpotter calls about 1:45 a.m. in the 8100 block of South Blackstone Avenue in the Avalon Park neighborhood and found 24-year-old Areanah Preston with gunshot wounds, according to the Cook County Medical Examiner's Office and police. One of the first officers to get there rendered aid, but Preston was transported to U Chicago Medicine, where she died, police said. No one was in custody in the fatal shooting, police said. I can't think of a more dangerous job, to be honest, especially for a young woman to be doing. Yet a lot of people don't seem to appreciate that, especially in, this current time. Police officers are demonized. They're portrayed as people just out there hunting black people down, trying to kill them. They're portrayed as, monsters half the time, when really, no one becomes a police officer on the south side of Chicago for an easy life. These are people out there risking their lives every day and clearly are targets as well. And unfortunately, this whole rhetoric of defund the police, it really gained traction, around 2020. And people in positions of power were pushing that. And now we're finding out that that was not a good move. We're seeing the consequences of that. And, I'm questioning, is it too late? Because these criminals are overrunning our cities and people aren't coming forward and turning them in. She was intelligent, a happy person. She was all of that and more. Preston's grandfather, whom she knew as Papa, and was getting ready to travel to Chicago, told the Tribune. I can't speak about her without breaking up. Preston, who lived in Avalon Park, had earned a master's degree in child and family law from Loyola University, Chicago, according to her LinkedIn and Facebook profiles. She graduated in 2019 with a bachelor's degree in criminal justice and law enforcement administration from Illinois State University, according to the profiles. And in a social media post, one of Preston's friends remembered her as a humble, dedicated, helpful, sophisticated soul. Another remembered her as the life of everything and as sweet as pie. During her undergraduate studies, Preston's academic interests ranged from restorative justice and trauma in incarcerated populations to diversity in law enforcement and police brutality. So this is someone who is interested in dealing with the issues that are within the Black community in particular, especially with issues pertaining to the police. And she was there on the front line, fighting and protecting and serving her community. She was there to represent, more Black people in the police force. I mean, she studied this. A former professor of Preston's at ISU, criminal justice scientist Charles Bell, said he met the young woman as a student. She attended a panel that included formerly incarcerated individuals and was in a class Bell teaches on race, ethnicity, and criminal justice. She understands the intimate details about what is happening in the community, some of the challenges that are impacting policing and mass incarceration, he told the Tribune. She was very vocal about that and sharing it with the class and deeply passionate about making a difference. And clearly, taking on that job, she lived in the Avalon Park area and she was in the thick of it. This is a young woman, a young Black woman coming home from work and, whose life was stolen. And Lori Lightfoot has spoken out, at that press conference, and she said that we need to stop speaking about the police in a certain way, in a way that is demonizing them. We need to stop doing that. And we need to understand that their job is very difficult, that they're putting their lives on the line every day. And rhetoric such as defund the police doesn't help.
There are some who say that our police officers are not worthy of our respect. There's some who say that we should not be supporting and funding our police department. I would urge any person who holds that view to reflect on moments like this. As we walked across the street, I was reminded of the tragic death of Ella French, because she too was brought to this hospital. We gathered here with the media at that time. Our officers, and particularly our young officers, as this one was, give their life in service, understanding that this might be their fate. But still, they don the uniform every day. They go out to protect us. They run towards danger every single day. So folks in this city, we need to do everything we can to support our police officers. And as the superintendent says, if in your journeys today or tomorrow, or even the next day, you see an officer, thank them for their service, because they are deserving of our gratitude, but also they're deserving of our support. We've asked, on behalf of the family who made a special request to me, you will obviously undoubtedly learn the name and circumstances of the officer and her family. They've asked, please honor their privacy and media stay away. Please. I think that's the least that we can do for them in this time. Well, as the superintendent said, as this unfolding tragedy develops, as the department learns more information, they'll be happy to share it with you. But on behalf of the family, specifically at their request, I'm asking the media, don't go on their street, don't try to talk to their neighbors, don't knock on the doors, just leave them in peace today, tomorrow. Give them the dignity that they deserve and the respect that they deserve in this moment of tragedy.
So apparently she has come out and said in the past that she doesn't support defunding the police. But there was a time where an 80 million cut was proposed. And some of these big city mayors were all promoting the whole defunding the police. There was the San Francisco mayor who put out this tweet saying, Last year, we directed $120 million from law enforcement to our African American community. Today, we're announcing the spending plan for that funding. We're listening to Black voices, committing resources and working to rectify the injustices that have continued for too long. And look at the state San Francisco is in now. Absolutely ridiculous, pandering to the whole defund the police movement in 2020. And there were real life consequences to this. So I'm glad Lori Lightfoot, spoke out in support of police officers. But over the years, we've seen how her policies have not helped the situation in Chicago. And now what's concerning is they've elected somebody who has spoke out blatantly about defunding the police. I think he's trying to distance himself now from that rhetoric. And I hope that's not the path he's going to take. But he spoke out and said, he was in support of defunding the police and they elect him. To me, it makes no sense. And the people who are going to be affected by this the most are the people who voted for him. Black people in our inner cities, people in low socioeconomic areas. They're the ones who are going to be affected by this the most.
Mr. Johnson, you attended an event in 2020. It was called We Don't Call Police. And that same year, you said it was a political goal to defund the police. Here is what you said.
The President of the United States, the former President of the United States, President Barack Obama, took it one step further as well, and basically said that the effort of the defund police movement lost an audience because of that that slogan, I guess is what he's calling it, which I don't look at it as a slogan. It's an actual real political goal.
So, Mr. Johnson, what do you say to Chicagoans who do want more officers in their neighborhoods?
Well, my public safety plan does just that. It's why in my public safety plan, we're going to promote, train, and hire 200 more detectives so that we can actually solve crime in the city of Chicago.
And this case reminds me of Keona Holly, who was a police officer in Baltimore. She was sitting in her car, she was off duty, and just someone came from behind and fired into her car. And she ended up losing her life, another young Black female police officer. In Chicago, there's a lot of issues with police officers taking their lives too. A very stressful job that's thankless at times, where they're every day, their lives are on the line. And the stress is taking its toll on many of them. And they're seeing cases of them taking their lives. Really, really tragic.
This morning, we are discussing the Chicago Police Department's efforts to address the mental health and wellness of its officers. According to Illinois Answers Project, last year, officer suicides rose to their highest levels since the CPD entered its consent decree in 2019. 7 police officers died by suicide in 2022, which is more than the previous 2 years combined. Manny Ramos from the Illinois Answers Project is here to talk about this. Good morning to you, Manny.
Good morning. Thank you for having me on.
Now, for years, CPD has been working on reforms in the consent decree, and that includes efforts to support the mental health of its officers. So tell us, how is the department doing in this specific area?
Yeah, so efforts to bolster the Chicago Police Department's officer wellness program hit a roadblock last year. As the department ran into staffing as well as technological shortages, essentially, and those shortages really prevented them from going further with the program. They released several different programs to help officers that were in need, but the tracking mechanism necessary to prove the effectiveness of those programs really is where it fell flat. And because of that, CPD was scrutinized by several city watchdogs, as well as now is running in compliance issues with the consent decree.
That's interesting. You talk about that technology. Is that due to funding? Why they couldn't further that technology? Talk more about that. That's very intriguing.
Yeah, I think it's mostly boiled down to the staffing problem, as CPD is not able to staff the necessary people to sort of track and collect this data and analyze it to make sure that the programs are effective. I think that's sort of the biggest problem is they have these programs, but the programs aren't being sort of checked on and making sure that the caseloads aren't overwhelming folks, but also that the programs themselves are helping the officers that are needing it.
And of course, officer staffing has been a hot topic in the last several weeks now.
The lack of resources, understaffed, underfunded, all of which have contributed to this situation. So my condolences to the family and Areanah's colleagues. I hope the person who is responsible for this is caught immediately and taken off of our streets. So thanks for watching, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next video.